Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish. The Grizzlies lost on Saturday night to the Utah Jazz. 124-123 was the final score. A very entertaining game as these Grizzlies games go. Basically every night they're scoring a ton of points. But in this one, there was no Ja Morant. Ja Morant missed the game with illness, a non-COVID illness. We could presume that's flu-like symptoms. There was a rumor in the game against the Kings. He told a fan that he felt like he had the flu. Maybe that explains him settling for 22 points and 6 assists in that Grizzlies victory. But the Grizzlies lost to a Jazz team that surprisingly is 5-2. Ja Morant does not play. Jake LaRavia also presumably with the same non-COVID illness as Ja. He didn't play. Tyus gets the start. And Bane has another big game. Dillon Brooks has an excellent game, but it's not enough. They do not get stops. The story of this game, sort of the story of the season if the Grizzlies hadn't been winning all their games, is they don't get stops. Once again, the defense lets them down in the post-game press conference. Taylor Jenkins just talked about the defensive attention. It wasn't there. He didn't really elaborate. He said all of it has to get better. The Grizzlies had difficulty guarding the three-point line. Kelly Olynyk and Lauri Markkanen scored 19 points combined in the fourth quarter as the Jazz rallied. They were down 6 midway through the fourth. They just lit up the Grizzlies from the three-point line. The Grizzlies had a lot of difficulty guarding out to the three-point line. Steven Adams did not play very much. He was pulled out of this one at the end of the game. I would guess for matchup reasons because he wasn't able to guard out to the three-point line. Aldama came in for him. Aldama, though, also had a lot of trouble getting out to the three-point line. He would sink back in a lot to kind of help off on a drive, and he would leave Olynyk or leave Markkanen out there, and that seems like a mistake. I don't know exactly what the Grizzlies' defensive game plan was, but you assume you don't want to leave these guys open on the perimeter. This is one of those examples where you really miss a Jaren Jackson Jr., who's more versatile, who can guard out there. But the Grizzlies don't get the stops they need. They don't have the answers to slow down the Jazz, and they lose a pretty disappointing game. This is the first loss where they've scored at least 120 points since the 2021 playoffs when they lost at Utah. It's a streak of 35 straight games. I know it's a novelty stat, but I found it interesting. Rob Fisher reminded me of it, but the Grizzlies had won 35 consecutive games when they'd scored at least 120 points. Scoring 123 points on Saturday night was not enough. It's a disappointing loss. It's a disappointing loss because you had the lead, because you put up all these great offensive numbers. You made 12 three-pointers. Last season when they made 12 three-pointers, they were virtually unbeatable. They made 44% of the three-pointers. They made 56.8% of all their field goal attempts. Rounding up, I mean, that's 57% of their field goal attempts, 44% of their threes, and they still lost. I looked this up because I was curious. In NBA history, teams who make at least 55% of their field goal attempts hit 10 three-pointers on at least 40% accuracy. They win 94% of their games. 1,290 wins to 73 losses. This was just the second time in Grizzlies franchise history they lost a game where they shot at least 55% from the field and made 10 three-pointers. The Grizzlies got all the offense they needed. Their defense let them down. Guess what? This year, the Grizzlies' record without Ja Morant, 0-1. We're not going to get off to some awesome start without Ja Morant this year, it looks like. 0-1, and the defense lets them down. Last year, the Grizzlies' defense got a lot better when Ja Morant sat out. Was not the case so far this year. There were good performances. I mean, Tyus Jones, starting for Ja Morant, had his first 20-point, 10-assist game of his career. Finished with 23 points and 10 assists. Had 2 steals. Only 1 turnover. He missed both of his free throws, though, in the second half. That hurts in the 1-point loss. By the way, this was the 4th highest scoring game of Tyus Jones' career. His career high is 27. Also, this was the 10th double-double of his career. Desmond Bane finished with 32 points. Made 3 out of 9 3-pointers, had 6 rebounds, only 2 assists. He turned the ball over a lot. He had 5 turnovers. He had his pocket picked a couple of times by Nickeil Alexander-Walker as he tried just to bring the ball up the court. You saw the difficulty of not having Ja Morant. I've talked plenty of times on this podcast about the Grizzlies' ability to play without a true point guard. Well, it really felt like it hurt him against the Jazz, as they turned the basketball over 20 times as a team. That's another one of those reasons why you don't win, despite the incredible shooting stats, despite scoring 123 points, despite picking up 11 steals. I've been bemoaning the lack of turnover creation for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies got 11 steals. By far their most in a game this season. Yet, despite forcing those turnovers of the Jazz, they turned it over way too much themselves and could not prevent the Jazz from dropping 124 points on them. Bane with his 32 points, that's now 3 consecutive games of scoring at least 30 points. He is only the 5th player in Grizzlies franchise history to have 3 straight games of 30 or more points, joining Ja Morant, Marc Gasol, Pau Gasol, and Bryant Reeves. Desmond Bane, now through 6 games, has posted the 4th highest scoring total in Grizzlies franchise history. The first 2, Ja Morant last year and Ja Morant this year, despite Ja only playing 5 games. Third is Rudy Gay at the start of the 2010-11 NBA season. And now Desmond Bane with the 4th most points for any Grizzly through the first 6 team games. Bane's made 25 3-pointers through the first 6 games, which is the most in Grizzlies history, ahead of the 22 he made through the first 6 games last year. This was Bane's 8th career 30-point game. He's now tied with O.J. Mayo and Jonas Valanciunas in the all-time franchise history rank for most 30-point games. The Grizzlies almost got a miracle victory out of this, though. Despite everything, they turned the basketball over with about 20 seconds left in the 4th quarter, down 4, and that should have been the game. That should have been the hammer nail coffin for the Jazz. But there was a brief glimmer of hope. There was an out-of-bounds call that the team successfully challenged, so the Grizzlies forced a turnover against the Jazz. With 20 seconds left, they get the ball back. Dillon makes this huge 3-pointer, part of his massive game. Cuts it to 1. Then there is a wild scramble on the next Jazz possession. The ball gets thrown straight up in the air. They can't grab it. There is sort of a scrum. We think maybe there's going to be a jump ball, but the Jazz retain possession. They finally throw it underneath to Lauri Markkanen. He misses a layup. By the way, the last 2-minute report says Dillon Brooks fouled him on this layup. But the Grizzlies end up with the basketball with 5 seconds left. They throw it to Tyus Jones. They have a transition opportunity, but the Grizzlies call timeout. Now, in many ways, this is just unfortunate for the Grizzlies. It's just bad luck. The coaching staff, presumably, called the timeout right when Dillon Brooks got that rebound and wanted to advance the ball. I don't know if they called it right when Dillon got the rebound, but we're assuming that's the only reason you would call timeout in that situation. They tried to get that timeout on the exact change of possession so then you could advance the ball into your front court. They like the idea of advancing the basketball with 4 seconds left. You run one play, one out-of-bounds play. The Grizzlies are very good at out-of-timeout plays. Now, they're not particularly good, as far as I can tell, or I don't know if we have data yet. Are they good at out-of-timeout plays where you have to score within 4 seconds or less? I don't know. Most of their out-of-timeout plays kind of take a while to develop. So they stop a semi-transition opportunity. The Grizzlies did not have numbers exactly. It was kind of like a 4-on-4 scramble. Are your odds better of scoring on a 4-on-4 scramble going full court in 5 seconds versus inbounding on your sideline in 5 seconds? I have no idea. I don't know what the data says. My opinion would be you're probably better off in transition. But the way it's unfortunate, so the referees acknowledge the timeout, but then say it's after the ball's already been moved forward. Dillon's already passed the ball to Tyus Jones by the time the timeout is honored, which means you cannot advance the ball into the front court. That is a fair ruling. That is a correct ruling. The way maybe you don't want to give the Grizzlies coaching staff the benefit of the doubt is in that situation, you're never going to get that timeout granted unless basically you've told the referees beforehand, hey, I'm going to yell for timeout as soon as there's a change of possession. But I don't know when they would have had an opportunity to do that. And even if the official has heard you say that beforehand, Dillon got that ball and passed it immediately, and they're probably not hearing you yell for timeout until that pass happens. So, the ball is not going to be advanced. So, even if the timeout had been granted, I don't know if it's the correct call. In the actual circumstance of what happened, where you have 4 seconds on maybe a semi-transition opportunity, a 4-on-3 or a 4-on-4 break, you're probably better off letting that play out. Now, I know we have the clarity of hindsight. The Grizzlies did not get a look at the basketball. They threw it in and Dillon lost it out of bounds, but the Jazz hit it. You retained possession. And then the final play, Desmond Bane slips, unfortunately, is not able to get a shot attempt off. So an unlucky ending. I'll grant you an unlucky ending for the Grizzlies. After briefly, when you got that stop on Larry Markkinen, it felt like, are we going to get a miracle victory out of this? Because they did not necessarily deserve the miracle victory. They did not outplay the Jazz. Yes, they had these great shooting numbers. Yes, they had a lot of huge runs. Like they had an 18-2 run. They had a 15-0 run in the second half. Anytime you have a 15-0 run in the second half and you score as many points as the Grizzlies did, it is a bummer to lose the basketball game, and especially to lose a basketball game against a team who you presumed before the season was not going to be very good. Now, this Jazz team is 5-2. They've beaten the Nuggets. They've now beaten the Grizzlies. They have some solid wins. They beat the Timberwolves. And yes, the Grizzlies were without Ja Morant and continue to play without Zaire Williams and Jaren Jackson Jr. But offensively, you played well enough to win. You got a performance from Desmond Bane, good enough to get you the victory. You got a performance from Tyus Jones, good enough for a victory. You got a performance from Dillon Brooks, good enough for a victory. Dillon Brooks was awesome in this game. I hope all the Dillon Brooks haters were watching this one. Yes, he can't do this every night. If he could, he'd be an All-NBA player. But you got a great performance from Dillon Brooks, and you kind of squander it. You would think, if you read off the stats of Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, and Dillon Brooks, you would think you win every one of those games. Dillon had 30 points. He had 3 steals. He had 4 assists. Really good game from Dillon Brooks. This, by the way, was Dillon's 12th 30-point game of his career, including the playoffs. He now has the 10th most 30-point games in Grizzlies franchise history. Dillon and Tyus and Bane played really, really well. They did not get a ton of support otherwise. Santi Aldama had a pretty solid offensive game, but like we said, his guarding of the three-point line didn't seem to be that effective. After posting all these really awesome on-off stats, he finished with a team worst -10 plus-minus. Steven Adams was in foul trouble on a lot of these illegal screens. The first half, they called so many illegal screens. Most of them were probably good calls, but some of them were not good calls, and all of them really disrupted the flow of the game, made it not fun to watch. Steven only finishes with 19 minutes played. He gets 10 rebounds, his 5 offensive rebounds, but only 2 points, only 1 assist, and 4 turnovers because of those offensive fouls, mostly. So far this season, Steven Adams' assists are way down. His scoring is even down. I thought his scoring might go up a little bit without Jaren. He might be looking to score. It seemed like he was looking to score against the Kings, where he finished with 12 points, but that's probably just statistical noise 6 games into the year. But Steven Adams not having as nice of a season doing the offensive things. Also, when you consider his free throws, Steven Adams now just 4 for 17 from the line this year. 23% from the line. Of course, he did not attempt a free throw in this game, so we can't hold that against him. Off the bench, the Grizzlies did not get many contributions. David Roddy had, arguably the best game of his career. He played 27 minutes, finished with 10 points, 7 rebounds. Also 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. An incredible stat line if you look at it. He also had an incredibly awful sequence in the second half where he committed a turnover. He made an illegal screen. In addition to his bad pass turnover, he fouled a 3-point shooter. He also was caught just standing flat-footed while the Jazz got multiple offensive rebound opportunities. So, yeah, we're really happy that he made a couple threes after coming into the game. Only 2 of 15 to make 2 out of 3 in this one. Very, very good to see. Also, one of them was in the fourth quarter. They were big shots. So, like, he made a big shot. Love to see that from David Roddy. There was plenty you could get optimistic about from his performance. If you cut together a highlight reel just of this game, very, very nice. But, of course, he had some rookie moments where his defense really, really lacked. He made some poor mental mistakes. Conchar, he was questionable with a shoulder injury coming into this one, and I have to wonder if that somehow affected his game because he played 28 minutes but did not score and only attempted 2 field goal attempts. And I was praising him profusely after the first 4 games with him getting his shots per 100 possessions way up. I was talking about how he's attempting over 11 3-pointers per 100 possessions. Well, that stat's gone down a lot. So, I mean, maybe it was just the flow of the game that the shots weren't coming to him, and it wouldn't be surprising last year for him to post a 28-minute and 2 shot attempts, 0-point performance. But we were looking for more, expecting more, hoping more, thinking this is someone who needs to score now, who needs to provide an offensive punch off the bench. And especially with Ja Morant not playing, you need a little more offense. He comes through with 0 points. Brandon Clark. All right, Brandon had some really good stuff, but he also was battling foul trouble. Only played 15 minutes. He only played a couple of minutes in the first half as he picked up 2 and then 3 quick fouls. His third foul, especially egregious. An illegal screen call. He didn't do anything wrong. But this, once again, goes into the, beating a dead horse segment of I don't understand how Taylor Jenkins handles foul trouble. I don't understand the concept of a bench player, of worrying about the minutes for a bench player. About worrying about the fouls for a bench player. If Brandon Clark fouls out, so what? Brandon Clark averages 20 minutes a game. The odds of him fouling out are very, very low. Did he foul out of this game? No, he finished with 4 fouls. Like, why are you... If you think Brandon Clark is the best option in your lineup, and he picks up 2 fouls in the first half or 3 fouls in the first half, continue playing him. I understand they like to get everybody experience, and they're like, all right, Brandon Clark's in foul trouble. We'll give Xavier Tillman a few more minutes. But, like, I don't understand why you alter your rotation. Or if you think one player is a better player, why would you not play that player? If they eventually foul out, then you can play Xavier Tillman. I don't get it. I know some people are like, hey, if you're worried about you're picking up your third foul, you're not going to play as well or play as hard. I guess. I would just tell my guy, listen, don't worry about picking up your third foul. If you foul out, you foul out. No big deal. Maybe there's a human element where you don't want to foul out, and so you're not being as aggressive, but I'm always confused by in effect, you foul your own players out. You artificially limit the minutes your players play because you're worried about foul trouble. Clearly, Taylor Jenkins disagrees with me. The coaching staff disagrees with me. They have their reasons for doing it, how they do it. But I would rather see Brandon Clark play 20 minutes as opposed to 14 minutes and 57 seconds because we're worried about him fouling out at some point. Xavier Tillman made 2 out of his 3 shots, had a nice little two-man game moment with Kennedy Chandler, I believe. Also, by the way, Kennedy Chandler, I thought had a really nice game. I was encouraged by the backup point guard minutes that the rookie gave us. He also got a near steal. Are we giving credit for those? I thought he showed some pretty good composure out there in his first actual serious NBA action where the game is up in the air. So Kennedy Chandler played pretty well in his time, but it wasn't enough. I mean, you needed more players to step up, and I think the way you needed more players to step up was on the defensive end. You had to get stops. You had to get rebounds. And unfortunately, the Grizzlies were unable to do it and lose kind of definitely a disappointing matchup against the Jazz. I mean, the Jazz hit 19 three-pointers, which is elite three-point numbers. Just elite three-point numbers. And again, that's how you lose despite having the very strong offensive numbers. But the Grizzlies will have an opportunity to get their revenge on Monday night, on Halloween. It's the rematch. It's the second game of the 2-game series the Grizzlies spending all weekend in Salt Lake City, and they will try to win that game. I don't know the status of Ja Morant or Jake LaRavia. I will put their injury information in the description of this podcast. You'll probably find out on your own before you even listen to this one. But it's an unfortunate loss, especially considering how the game went and how well the Grizzlies were scoring. But if we want to pull back and go big picture again, 4-2, I'll take it. Before the season, looking at the schedule, the schedule's a little bit easy, but you got to travel. You're playing some games without Dillon Brooks. Now, of course, the thing we didn't know is Ja Morant missed this game, and those are going to happen. Ja Morant is going to miss some games. That's where your depth really comes into play. And so being 4-2 with everything that's happened, totally fair, totally good position to be in. Like, it wasn't just the Grizzlies who stumbled. Lots of other good teams lost on Saturday, lost over the weekend in somewhat surprising fashion. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in the NBA, and you got to always stay on your toes, always stay ready because nothing is given. Let's do a few team stats, and I'll do that right after this short break. All Grizz all the time. Stay connected and follow at MemGrizz and at Grind City Media across all social channels, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for breaking news, one-of-a-kind content, and all the perspectives you won't find anywhere else. All right, that was a pretty short ad, so I don't feel bad that I only have a few team stats I think are worth going over. This is just through 6 games, so take it with a grain of salt. I probably incorrectly accept the numbers that reinforce my previously held beliefs, such as the Grizzlies' defensive rating and their defensive rebounding numbers and their lack of forcing turnovers. But again, it's just 6 games. These numbers are heavily skewed, both by getting hammered by the Mavericks and then facing the Nets, Kings, and Jazz and their generous defenses all back-to-back-to-back. So just for informational purposes only, here are some stats for the team. They are number 1 in offensive rating. They keep scoring a ton. Number 1 in offensive rating after 6 games, but 28th in defensive rating. These are the cleaning the glass stats, which filter out garbage time. They shot all the way up to 6th in effective field goal percentage in the league. That's after lighting it up again in 3 straight games against the Jazz, Kings, and Nets. They are 1st in offensive rebound percentage, much like they were last year, but they are 27th this year in opponent offensive rebound percentage. They're 12th in overall 3-point percentage. They are 11th in second chance points, 11th in fast break points, and 9th in points in the paint. Those are all the categories they led the NBA in last season. They're still 4th overall in three-pointers made per game and 9th in attempts, and then 18th in steals per game and 7th in blocks per game. And they are 2-3-1 against the betting spread. And now, technically the betting spread means nothing, but it can show you how well they've performed relative to how they were expected to perform in each game. Like the one game they weren't favored was against the Mavericks. They lost by 41. I know there were particular circumstances that we're blaming that loss on, but 2-3-1 against the spread means, all right, how good are they really? We know they are good enough, to make the playoffs. We know they're elite when Ja and Bane are on their game, but are they better than last year? We still don't know. We're hopeful. We're optimistic. Of course, that win over the Nets is looking worse and worse by the day, as the Nets are now 1-5 on the season and going through their own particular problems right now. But the Grizzlies, again, back at it on Halloween night on Monday, and then they finish up the road trip at Portland on Wednesday night. Hopefully, if they can win both those two games, and welcome back Jaren sometime relatively soon, they will continue building that momentum forward, and we'll have fewer and fewer of these episodes where we're sad about a disappointing loss. Anyways, I hope you have a great Monday. Hope you have an awesome Halloween. Celebrate it safely, and I will talk to you soon. Go Grizz!